Welcome to this classic briefs explainer. Okay, picture this. Champagne flowing, sprawling mansions, and absolutely epic summer nights. We are talking, of course, about F. Scott Fitzgerald's masterpiece, The Great Gatsby. But if you've never actually read the book, or maybe you only know the pop culture adaptations, you might actually have a pretty skewed idea of what the story is really doing. Because let's be real, on the surface, Gatsby looks like this glittering story about unimaginable wealth, extravagant parties, and star-crossed romance. But scratch beneath that roaring 20s glamour, and you'll find something way darker. At its core, this is a sharp, brutal tragedy. It's the story of a man who literally builds his entire life, his whole identity, around a dream that reality is simply never going to give back to him. So let's dive into this. We're going to map out the collapse of this American dream by looking at the glamour and the truth, the geography of wealth, the invention of Gatsby himself, the impossible green light, and finally, how careless people leave a trail of destruction. Part 1. The Glamour and the Truth. To really get this world, we have to ride along with our narrator, Nick Carraway. Now, Nick is this fascinating mix of participant and outsider, and he basically guides our moral compass here. The interesting thing is, he doesn't hate Gatsby, even though Gatsby stands for literally everything Nick usually despises. Instead, Nick looks at him and sees a guy possessed by this extraordinary, almost magical capacity for hope. The real tragedy is that this pure romantic readiness gets absolutely shredded by the toxic, corrupt world around him, or as Nick famously calls it, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams. Part 2. The Geography of Wealth. Fitzgerald is an absolute genius at using geography to show us these really deep, sinister class divides on Long Island in 1922. We've got East Egg and West Egg. East Egg, where Tom and Daisy Buchanan live, represents old money. Think inherited privilege, ruthless entitlement, basically a careless aristocracy. Contrast that with West Egg, where Gatsby and Nick live. This is new money territory. It's all about striving ambition, the desperate hustle, and wealth that's just wildly performative. And trust me, East Egg fiercely looks down on West Egg, because to them, West Egg is loud, gaudy, and totally unearned by birthright. Which brings us right to Daisy Buchanan. Yes, she's the object of Gatsby's absolute obsession, but guys, she is way more than just a lost romance. Gatsby actually hits the nail on the head when he realizes her voice is full of money. It's such a brilliant realization. Daisy's the literal, physical embodiment of the wealth, the status, and the total ease of privilege that Gatsby has been chasing his entire life. He doesn't just want the girl, he wants the whole world she represents. Part 3. Inventing Jay Gatsby. So why and how does someone build a completely fake identity just to capture an impossible ideal? Well, the crazy truth is that Jay Gatsby doesn't really exist. He started out as James Gatz, a desperately poor farm boy in North Dakota. He literally rejects his own parents, catches a glimpse of crazy wealth on a millionaire's yacht, and starts scheming. Later, during World War I, his officer's uniform hides his poverty, which is how he manages to romance Daisy in the first place. Throw in a brief, totally deceptive stint at Oxford, and boom, he transforms into the West Egg millionaire Jay Gatsby. Fitzgerald tells us he sprang from his platonic conception of himself. Basically, he invented this idealized, almost godlike version of who a 17-year-old boy thinks he should be, and he stayed insanely loyal to that illusion until the very end. And because his whole persona is completely invented, everything around him is essentially a stage prop. His wealth isn't just about financial success, it is a massive theatrical performance built entirely out of longing. The hundreds of random people at his parties, the hydroplane, the huge library of unread books, the crazy piles of custom English shirts, it's all an elaborate, incredibly expensive set. And the craziest part? The audience is literally an audience of one, Daisy. The whole shebang is designed solely to win her back and hit rewind on his own history. Part 4. The Impossible Green Light. We've got to shift gears now and talk about the crushing weight of memory, because you absolutely cannot understand Gatsby without understanding the green light. It burns all night at the end of Daisy's dock right across the bay from Gatsby's mansion. To him, it's the physical proof of hope, of longing, and of that tantalizing distance. But, and this is key, it also represents his fatal, tragic flaw. He has this absolute, unshakable belief that you can repeat the past. He literally wants to wipe out the last 5 years, pretend Tom Buchanan doesn't exist, and just go right back to exactly how things were. But there is such a haunting sadness to this illusion, right? Gatsby's dream was doomed from the very beginning. Because that pure, untainted past he was so desperately chasing, it was already gone. He was trying to grab onto something that had already slipped through his fingers, lost to the vast obscurity of the passing years. Part 5, The Careless and the Dead. All right, this is where that glittering, champagne-soaked surface of the Roaring Twenties completely and violently shatters into death and destruction. Let's look at how these illusions violently crash into reality. So Daisy thinks she wants this thrilling romantic escape with Gatsby. But the second reality hits, when she accidentally runs over a woman named Myrtle while driving Gatsby's car, what does she do? She instantly retreats back to the safety of Tom's money. Tom, who thinks he's this highly civilized, cultured guy, turns out to be incredibly brutal, practically directing Myrtle's grieving husband right at Gatsby. And Gatsby? Still clinging to his illusion of repeating the past, he takes the fall for Daisy's crime. He is murdered in his own swimming pool, totally abandoned by the one woman he sacrificed literally everything for. This is where Nick has his absolutely devastating lightbulb moment about the Buchanans. He says, they were careless people. Tom and Daisy, they smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money. It is the perfect illustration of the utter moral emptiness of the ultra-rich in this world. They just smash up people's lives and let someone else clean up the mess. And if you want ultimate proof of that emptiness, think about Gatsby's parties. Hundreds of people drinking his liquor, eating his food, using his home. But at his funeral, who actually shows up? Just Nick Carraway, Gatsby's poor, elderly dad, and literally one random partygoer. The isolation is just absolute. Part 6. A Dream That Destroys. We really need to connect this 1922 tragedy to the broader, universal tragedy of the American dream. You might be asking yourself, why does a century-old story still resonate so deeply right now? Well, are we really that different today? Gatsby's wildly performative wealth and endless reinvention, that is practically the blueprint for our modern digital culture. Think about it. We are drowning in curated online identities, toxic hustle culture, and people chasing totally impossible versions of success. We still confuse status and wealth with love every single day. And we definitely still see the profound danger of living in some idealized version of the past instead of actual reality. So we beat on boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. You know, Fitzgerald wasn't rejecting ambition here. He wasn't saying it's bad to want things. What he was doing was warning us about the tragic trap of impossible longing. He's warning us about what happens when you pour your entire soul into a fantasy that reality simply cannot sustain. So I want to leave you with this one final provocative thought. When we confuse status, an artificial image, and a completely unrecoverable past with the life we genuinely think is finally going to make us whole, aren't we all just chasing our own fatal green light? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.